Are we ready?
Yeah.
Great,
Already.
great. So hello and welcome to the Amplifying Scientific Innovation video podcast. I'm your host and moderator, Dr. Sophia Consulting, founder and CEO of the Sophia Consulting Firm, a consultancy that fuses human intelligence with AI to bridge discovery and delivery through strategic messaging, digital infrastructure, and workforce development. I'm also the creator of the Amplifying Scientific Innovation platform, which began 5 years ago in Brooklyn, New York, with the launch of this very podcast. Since then, it's expanded to Irvine, California, where I now live. Hello, California, with new initiatives, including a companion book, The Amplifying Scientific Innovation, available now in paperback and ebook on Amazon, as well as a new apprenticeship program, first the Digital Marketing Apprenticeship in partnership with the Orange County Department of Education, and a new laboratory research apprenticeship currently under final review by the California Division of Apprenticeship Standards. It's an exciting time indeed to lead a consulting firm that bridges academia and industry through strategic communications, innovation apprenticeships, and AI-driven workforce programs. This week, LA Tech Week is a special one because we gather leaders in venture capital, startups, and technology to talk about the things that are very exciting and innovative within our space. Now, for the first time ever, we're going live and sharing the conversation instantly with our audience. Nearly 250 people signed up via Patiful, the event platform. And for those who couldn't join us live, the replay will be available right here on the Sophia Consulting Firm's YouTube channel. Today, we'll explore how AI is reshaping translational science, enabling new forms of scientific storytelling, and advancing health equity. I am joined today by an incredible panel of leaders from biotech, diagnostics, and digital health. And they're all going to be here to discuss how AI is shaping the industry, as well as communication and innovation. Are we ready for them? I think we are. So first and foremost, it's going to be Dan Witzling, who is sitting in today for Stephanie Hsieh, the CEO of BioscienceLA. Dan is the Chief Operating Officer for BioscienceLA, an organization that is creating, enabling, and promoting a thriving life sciences ecosystem across greater Los Angeles. Secondly, we're going to be joined by Dr. George Ejiofor Aninwene II, who is the lab head, California State LA BioSpace, which is the region's premier incubator for life science venture creation and startup mentorship. BioSpace was co-founded by Dr. Howard Drew, who also signed up for today's event. He's a fellow BGSU alum who is also going to help us in talking about how we bridge the gap between academic innovation and industry growth across Southern California. My third panelist is H. Puentes. He's the co-founder and CEO of San Diego Squared, a nonprofit that's focused on empowering tomorrow's STEM leaders today through partnerships, scholarships, and mentorship programs. H was also a guest on season 4 of the series alongside the San Diego Squared co-founder, Dr. Bill Rastetter, whom I met through our shared board leadership at Daré Bioscience. Also joined today by David Lee. He's the founder and chief collaboration officer for Health Collaboration Partners, helping nonprofits, startups, and biotech organizations build sustainable partnerships that advance health outcomes. David and I met last year at an AI LA event, actually during the AI LA Life Science Summit. And finally, last but not least, is Craig Lipset. He's the co-chair of Decentralized Trials and Research Alliance, DTRA for short. He's also the former founder and the Clinical Innovation Partners, and who's a former head of clinical innovation at Pfizer, and a returning guest from the 2021 Clinical Trial Diversity Panels. And I've also featured Craig in a one-on-one discussion in season 3 of the series. So it's a pleasure to welcome you all to the series. Welcome you all.
Thanks, Sophia.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I can't be a nerdy scientist without citing some data. So according to a 2024 Nature Medicine review, only about 30% of AI models that are published in healthcare are clinical validated before implementation, which further underscores the gap between innovation and real-world translation. However, when AI is validated and integrated successfully, it has reduced diagnostic turnaround time by up to 40% and improved predictive accuracy across oncology and rare disease applications. With that lens in mind, Dan, in your work at BioscienceLA, can you describe what you're hearing about how AI is accelerating the path from research to real-world outcomes? Are there some examples that you can share where AI integrations has transformed the pace or the precision of discovery.
Great, thank you. And welcome to everybody as well joining us on the panel and listening today. Thank you for being here. Yeah, so BioscienceLA, just as some context, we were created through public-private partnership as an intention in order to connect populations, communities, even just within the LA County area where there's 11 million people. And the reason that it needed to be created was people weren't necessarily, research institutions,
Mhm.
private sector, and such weren't necessarily working together, educational systems, youth not understanding paths to navigation. We're definitely taking advantage of AI and seeing how it can be applied better, not just in research, but in clinical trials. We're connected to companies, both locally. There's a very great community called AILA,
Mhm.
where people are coming together. I know that they're participating as well with LA Tech Week.
Yes.
We're looking at companies like People Science that, in particular, thinking about diversity.
Mhm.
We're no longer in the case where you can just do research on populations that sign up locally for a study. You can look and target populations throughout the country and pool them together and start to get some more meaningful data. And this is something that's helping a lot further with chronic disease, oncology, and such. And another interesting company, just to kind of share as an example, that takes it even one further step, and we'll see. But there's a new company called Ask It
Hmm.
that's using AI models to do virtual research around populations that simulates what they think responses are to see what type of accuracy you can get. Basically, we see AI in a way that is definitely culling information faster and broader, but
Mhm.
you still have to have the intentional design on the front end to ensure that you're engaging effectively with the right populations, because historically that was not the case. And
Right.
historically, we didn't even have, we to this day, most of the NIH grants are extremely low in terms of the diversity of the scientists that are applying them.
Mhm.
And this has dramatic implications. And so when we look at the inequities in health equity around breast cancer rates and such at different populations, some of it at least has to do with the fact that people were looking at people that looked like them who were doing the research. So all in all, AI is an accelerator.
Mhm.
AI is a great tool, and it's still going to be up to us as the people behind the scenes to really be the arbiters to make sure that it's doing the right research to close the gaps.
Yeah, extremely well said. I think a point that you made around engagement is going to be critical because even as we think about healthcare delivery, how are we engaging with patients and how is AI going to help us do that differently? Later on, Craig and I, we've had this talk before about the data-enabled patients. We're going to get into that angle a little bit earlier, but thank you for that very comprehensive overview. And George, just from your perspective as a scientist and educator, where do you think AI still struggles within that translational pipeline? What are you learning at BioSpace LA, and how can incubators like BioSpace help bridge those gaps?
Thank you so much. So again, just what tell you what LA BioSpace is LA BioSpace is a wet lab incubator associated with Cal State LA that has the goal to push forward biotech innovation in the LA area, just to bring up more biotech leaders so that we can make LA a hub for biotech innovation and move that forward. So at LA BioSpace, we have a variety of different teams that actually come through to be able to work on their different innovations. We also have the LA BioStart program led by Howard Hsieh. One of the things that has come to light is AI is a fantastic tool for helping to kind of bridge the gap between large information data sets and patient outcomes and patient care. And while it's a very powerful tool, like Dan said, it's
Mhm.
extremely important that we make sure that the data sets that are being looked at are representative of a diverse group of people so that we are creating better solutions for everybody and not just some people. Additionally, AI can also be used to help early on in sort of like the patenting process for
Mhm.
these different innovations, just to lower the lower the barrier to entry for different groups so that they can get their ideas off the ground faster, so that they can get to the market faster, so that they can push forward the research at an accelerated rate. But with that, we still will need appropriate guidelines to make sure that things are done in an ethical and safe way.
Great. Extremely well said. I think that we all sort of share that same agreement that AI is a tool, it's not a solution. And like any tool, it has to be optimized to work for us. And we have to be able to take the lessons from the past and find new ways to tell new stories. And that's really the goal of translational science. How are we connecting the dots between the data in the lab and patient engagement? So thank you for sharing that. Now, before we move on to the next segment on AI and scientific storytelling, does anybody else want to share any points around what we just discussed? Anything that came up while we're chatting? All right, no worries. We'll carry on. Oh, sorry. Was that someone? Last chance. All right, we're going to move on now. So the next section is around AI and scientific storytelling, an area that I greatly enjoy. So we know that scientific impact depends not only on results, but also on how these results are communicated. So I vividly remember from our earlier conversations back in 2022, you defined scientific innovation as a diversity of thought, background, and experience. You said scientific innovation is born out of a diverse perspective, a novel idea that's been operationalized and brought to life. I love it. And that's why I still remember it. So that definition, of course, centers on diversity, which aligns so well with what we're going to be talking about today. So how can AI help scientists and companies tell stories better and in a more inclusive way, especially as we think about impact, not just inclusion, what is the impact of our stories? How do we do that without losing accuracy or authenticity?
Yeah, so thank you, Sophia, for having us here. And a little background, San Diego Squared, we are really an organization that goes hyper local in the high school and colleges, identify incredibly talented students that have shown a real promise, a real interest, a real passion for STEM. Maybe they've been tinkering with robots, writing code, data, chemistry, biology, but they just so happen to be low income and underrepresented. And then we bring them into our programs, we develop that talent and connect that talent to opportunities at STEM-driven companies. We really think companies are built to do what they do, right? Sell genomic sequencing, sell a therapeutic, save a life, sell a semiconductor. And so they're not really built to go out and engage in community in a meaningful way. And that's why we see this sort of lack of companies' ability to reach in deep into communities and identify talent. So San Diego Squared kind of fits and solves that problem for them. And the best part, the last thing I'll say about SC2 is that we aren't reinventing the wheel. We do this pretty well globally when it comes to sports and entertainment. LeBron James on the cover of Sports Illustrated in high school. Lionel Messi was found at 11 years old. Michael Jackson at 5. Christina Aguilera, Selena Gomez, Britney Spears, Ryan Gosling. We do a phenomenal job of identifying young talent, developing that talent, and connecting that talent when it comes to sports and entertainment. We take that scouting model, but we just do it for low-income students into STEM careers. And so, in terms of communication, I think, one of the things that you often find is that people will use ChatGPT or an AI or an agent in a way that helps them inform them on something, frankly, they already know.
Right.
And I think an interesting thing for scientists to look at is to have the agent critique them. Right? And so I think one of the things that I've been encouraged to do by people that I really respect in the AI space is just to engage with AI. I know that sounds like something that people oh, of course, it seems natural that people would do that, but actually they don't. They kind of do the surface level, copy, paste, edit, where's my comma go, that terrible hyphen everybody knows about, right? But it's really not something that you engage in, right? So what I mean by that is watching videos and understanding how to train your agent with data so that it's responding in the way that you want to respond to, that you're critical and saying, hey, how do I take this data that can be quite complex and quite dense and somebody in New York can interpret it or someone at this conference can interpret it. So I think really using the AI as a tool and going just a little bit more deeper will help you become a better communicator. Because if you're just using it to kind of do the edit, the
Right.
grammar stuff, you're gonna just reinforce what you do, and it's gonna be much more polished, right?
Right.
But if you're interacting with the AI and you're actually like taking it to levels where I think is really exciting,
Mhm.
you're gonna find that you're gonna be able to, you could say take all of this data and create an engaging story, right? And then I think, I think it's worth saying that I think great speakers, I think you should practice. I know it's
Hmm.
like, the imagination of you with the soap or the scrub in your shower in the mirror, all the great speakers practice.
Right.
And so I think what happens oftentimes is scientists, because they know the data so well, they kind of forget some of the other stuff. Like you gotta kind of practice a little bit. How do you look like in the mirror? Like memorize the line to a certain degree, figure out when the punchline is, go to other people and present it in front of them. So AI is really, really important because it can act as that tool. It can act as that help, that PhD level assistant, that person that can help you, or that technology that can help you. But at the end of the day, there's no replacing the kind of the human aspects of it. And I think that when scientists go too far down the road of like trying to turn everything into a technological approach, they forget that it's all about being grounded in humanity. So if
Right.
you're using it as a means to an end, then I think you're in a good position. If you see it at the ends in and of itself, I think you're going to run into much more problems, and people are not going to connect with those stories as much as you would like to. And I think that's why some of the smartest people don't get their posters chosen at some of these big conferences, right? Because it's just too technical. No one's going to understand it. And so having something that's much more grounded in humanity, I think will attract people a lot better. And you can use AI to help you do that.
Extremely well said. I think the humanity part is obviously great, but we also forget that AI is a model. You train it. It's like anything else. Like, why didn't you give me what I want? Now, I will admit there have been some times where ChatGPT and we've had some heart-to-heart discussions because I'm like, you should be better. But I think the point of it is, I also think, what if that was a human being I was talking to? Would I speak to them the same way? Would I have the same expectations of them? So I think our expectations to begin with need to be grounded in reality. And we also have to think about the future. I teach at Vanguard University. I teach chemistry twice a week. Everybody's favorite topic, right? They love it, right? But then this concept of bringing ChatGPT into classrooms, there's some professors that are like, oh no, it could never happen. But I'm like, we have to embrace reality and find new ways to make AI work for us, right? We cannot delete it. You can't erase it. It's here and it's here to stay. And David, you look like you're ready to say something, and obviously I'm happy to hear your insights. I'm also curious to know more about health collaboration partners. How are you integrated AI-driven storytelling to build trust among patients, clinicians, investors? And can you share with an example of where AI enhanced communication improved your engagement or outcomes?
Sure, yeah. So I'm David Lee with Health Collaboration Partners, a consulting firm based here in LA. Focus a lot on fundraising and work probably equally with the private sector and nonprofits. I've been in the osteoporosis space for about 14 years. So I guess what's been resonating with me today is, generally AI is bringing to us finally an ability to screen and diagnose patients at scale. I mean, there's about an 80% care gap even after a fracture in terms of people getting screened, diagnosed, treated if they have osteoporosis. So we're seeing between the kind of health system side, having that ability to use a previous X-ray, CT, et cetera, to find someone that has osteoporosis, get them in to be diagnosed and treated. And then also on kind of the patient communication side, because there is such a shortage, especially of the key bone health specialists, endocrinologists, rheumatologists, it takes 6 to 12 months to see someone. Many times they have a NP or PA that's helping to kind of interface with the patients. But because this is a silent disease, AI tools are really bringing to osteoporosis the ability to really keep this top of mind for a patient, to interact with them, of course, in a more human way. So I think between the care coordination piece and this health system piece, I really do feel that finally we can really make a big dent in the disease that is osteoporosis. And having worked for a couple of patient groups right now, seeing how they are perceiving AI, and some patients certainly see it with kind of a jaded eye, right? Like they're not trusting of it, and others are kind of all in and are learning how to manage their diseases. I know I met one patient that puts all of her medications into ChatGPT and then kind of gives her a management plan, and even is able to flag things like, hey, maybe there's some two of these medicines are having competing side effects. So I know patients are starting to use AI as well for some of those reasons that sometimes the health system isn't able to do as effectively. So it's been an interesting space where we're at right now, in that, it feels like this is a fairly new thing, but I know obviously there's been AI for quite some time, but for whatever reason around COVID, I feel like that was really where everything took off. And now, you go to the health meeting or any digital health meeting, and everyone has AI in the name of their company, right? And they're like, you're not really doing AI, but so I think some people are kind of jumping on the shark. So really pleased to be here, and really appreciate the conversation.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to obviously have you here as well. Before we move on to the next segment, I feel like we're doing great on time, almost too well on time. Does anybody have any thoughts to share?
Sophia, I really enjoyed the perspectives that are being shared here so far, and I think H also had some really great grounded practical tips for folks. It reminded me of, I think the personal journey so many of us are on using these tools in ways beyond just search. I think that spirit of engaging in conversations with AI like a colleague, rather than just viewing it as a place to ask a question and then run out the room. I know for me, I've really focused a lot on building prompt libraries, so that I can really hone and develop the prompts and questions and the ways I'm phrasing these for different uses, and have even started to focus energy on shared prompt libraries with colleagues. We have one through a little group called an AI Builders Guild, but finding others that are kind of going down this journey with you and sharing those prompts, so that you can really hone that ability to use AI to play these different roles and persona and go beyond just grammar checks and Google search like use cases. I think when we start to use it in ways that we challenge it to take different roles, it also helps us get beyond that. That's a great idea. Impulse response that AI has, that desire to please. So no matter what you seem to pose, like I'm going to open an ice cream shop in Alaska, that's a great idea as the
Yeah,
first reply.
yeah.
I think when we challenge it a bit more through our prompts, we can get a little more targeted with the types of engagement and outputs we get.
I love that prompt libraries. I've been doing the same thing. I'm like, well, this kind of worked last week. Let me just save it so that next week I don't have the same problems. And it sounds remedial, but I remember like as an undergraduate student 20 years ago that I used to have like an equation sheet for all my chemistry classes. And the idea was to prepare me for my chemistry exams. I don't know why we don't think sort of intuitively when it comes to AI. It has to do perhaps with our expectations and all. But thank you for sharing
Well,
those.
that's a great analogy, though, Sophia,
Right.
because we are all students here, right? This
Right.
is a new subject material for so many of us. Obviously, AI has been around a minute, and plenty of people have been touching it for more than that minute. But for many of us, this is a new subject matter, and we should
Exactly.
engage it as we are students.
Exactly. And there has to be humility with that and maybe a little bit of patience, maybe. Um,
Interesting. I was at a wealth management conference earlier this week, and they
mm,
brought in Robert Smith from Vista Equity
mm,
Partners, which is a $100 billion asset under management organization, and they are really looking at agentic solutions as the future for their businesses and optimizing. But one data point that he shared that I thought was pretty powerful was there are going to be 12 billion different agents just in his universe in the next 10 years.
oh, wow.
Just amongst his companies. So I think what that tells, to replace thousands of employees, right? Let's just be clear. So what that tells you is that these agents are going to be doing little things. So that's the other piece of advice that I would kind of tell people listening is like, when you think about your workflow, when you think about what you're doing, try
Mhm.
as much as you can to break down that workflow into tiny little bitty chunks and figure out like what little action am I doing, like an email response? And what's going to happen is you're going to have that be an agent, and another one is going to be an agent. There's going to be administrative agents that are going to make sure that all these other agents are operating in the proper way, right? And so when you think about an organization that large, right, with 100 billion assets under management, the many companies underneath, they're trying to optimize. So if they're talking about 12 billion agents, and you think that your one agent's going to be a super agent, you're probably not looking at it in the right way, right? So I think
Exactly.
really thinking more granular about AI and doing very small task, and then how you're kind of linking those, a bit like building a quilt rather
Right.
just one giant blanket that comes from one sheet. That's not how it's going to be in the future. And so as you're thinking about your organization and you're thinking about even a workflow, like what are those different steps? And then what can, how can it help you? And then the second thing is, it's been super helpful to me to buy the upgraded version where I can talk to the AI. I think that is like a real big leap, because it's just humans are naturally talkers. And so it's
Yeah.
just much more of a natural and a way that you can engage it. So if you're in a position to be able to afford the extra $20 or whatever your whatever GPT you're using can talk with it, it's a little bit easier to kind of engage in that kind of audio way, vocal way.
Yeah. Engagement is a word that keeps coming up. I think obviously started with Dan when he was talking about his work, and H, he sort of connected the dots once again. And I think that we have to think about how we engage in with AI. It seems pretty simple and intuitive. And to your point, it's not gonna be about whether you like it or not. These technologies are going to evolve. And if you're not part of the race, you're going to lose out. And I imagine I've seen some reports that say that $20 that we pay a month, we're going to go back in time and remember. Do you remember when it was just $20 a month to have ChatGPT? Because it's obviously going to get more expensive as time goes by, right?
I just wanted to add in as well,
Yeah.
just from a different perspective,
Yeah.
just along the lines of hope, is how we can use AI in positive ways to overcome confirmation bias, which is extremely important in diagnosis. And also, as in California, as we're analyzing what did go right, what went wrong with the fires, looking at the communities that were impacted, and really just studying health effects and health impacts. These are issues that we have over time. We were dealing, with during COVID with the vaccines, why certain populations were and weren't, and certain assumptions that were made early on that worked at the detriment of people that we're trying to engage with. So, I mean, there's huge health equity issues that hoping AI for good will accomplish. And then the dark side that AI, I think, Craig was saying it right, and others as well, that it will agree with you almost too much. That if you
Right.
have an opinion and you're not thinking in how you're looking for AI to validate what you're doing, it might find research that proves your point, and looking at all the many things that we know for certain all of a sudden are causing autism, that are hopefully some of us are pumping the brakes on because none of it's true. But
Exactly.
how AI can almost validate that philosophy when nothing, trying to avoid politics, but just
I
to
know.
say it's extremely an important tool in a good and a bad way around bias, and just thinking about kind of the theme for today of what we can do with AI, and how we can better prompt and encourage others as well to whatever fast decisions we're making, or if we're doing analysis on causal relationships, that we can use this in a more effective way that will get us to at least more elaborate solutions than kind of A must equal B.
Right.
That science doesn't necessarily work that way.
Right. I get frustrated with ChatGPT sometimes because I'll ask the question and then it's like, oh, should I, start a foundation? Yes, your foundation could be started in 6 months from now. You can expand. You could be in Rwanda. You could be, I'm like, wait, I just asked the question. You've given me all different solutions. In a way, yes, it boosts your confidence. It lets you know that anything is possible. But we also have to be grounded in reality. And that's why I often have to fall back on data to help us tell that story, because sometimes it's not just your anecdotal anecdotal evidence or your perspectives. Anybody can have an opinion, but obviously what we're going to rely on is more data to back that opinion. Even with ChatGPT, as a scientist, I'm trying to draft a manuscript. I have learned the hard way that it's not great for referencing. Okay, it's going to find me some references that don't match and things of that nature. So there's still going to be a need for us to go in and vet the work. I think it's that additional work that we don't want. We want it to just do the work for us. But again, we have to be mindful in our expectations. So this has been a great segment, I think.
Mhm.
And without further ado, I'm going to move on to the third segment. And this is a topic that is pretty close to my heart. Obviously, I'm a cancer research scientist by training, and a lot of the work that I've done has been focused on showcasing health disparities in the oncology space. In fact, when we had this conversation back in 2021, I highlighted a study by SWOG, a research study that stated that only 1 in 4 participants in clinical trials that are sponsored by pharmaceutical companies are African-American patients. And then we go back to think about cancer itself. So cancer is the second leading cause of death in the United States, a major cause of death worldwide, yet people of low socioeconomic status actually suffer higher mortality rates and also have poorer survival rates compared to the rest of the populations. Many of these happen to be African Americans who are also ironically underrepresented in clinical trials. But this gap underscores the urgent need to ensure that the future of AI, translational research, and clinical innovation is equitable and inclusive. Obviously, it's easier said than done, but again, we have to keep taking steps to make change. That's how change happens. So, Craig, obviously, you've long championed decentralized trials, and I have enjoyed our conversations around the data-enabled patient. So when we think about what's going on within our space today, obviously, there's been a change since the last time that we talked. What guardrails are essential to ensure that AI advances health equity rather than widening those disparities with the use of models that might be biased, limited data pools, and things of that nature? Could you share some of your insights on that?
Thanks for setting up this important topic, Sophia. I always appreciate these conversations together. And as you mentioned, I work on clinical trials for new medicines. Equity here is certainly about making research participation accessible for all. We know that those who participate in research tend to benefit from improved access to care, but this session is about advancing good science, and good science requires representative patients in our research cohorts. They need to represent the patients who will ultimately be exposed to those new medicines. And so the use of AI here certainly has, a number of great use cases. We can use AI to better design our studies, to make them, to make sure those protocols are understanding of different patient needs. We can use AI to improve patient matching and help more representative patients at the top of our recruitment funnels. And certainly for a lot of the work that I do leading the Decentralized Trials Research Alliance, DTRA, which is a nonprofit collaboration space, a consortia inclusive of pharma, of tech, of service providers, of government agencies, of patient groups, of health systems, globally working together to ease the adoption of these types of methods that can improve research access. For us, decentralization is a key enabler of improved representation. Right? When we earn the trust with patients, the next barrier is, can they get to a place where research is happening, or how can we flip that and enable research to come to where those patients may be? But the crux of your question is really about what we can do to overcome some of the barriers that we've been talking about around the dark side of AI. And there are lots of great frameworks, but I'm going to give 4 tips for our audience today, and then I'll love to hear what others on our panel may be thinking here. Certainly one is around data diversity. Artificial intelligence, a friend used this definition last week. I'm going to poach. AI is just software that learns from examples. And if the examples we're showing AI do not represent the people that we want to benefit from it, then it's just software. It's just software that has learned from what we've taught it. And so if our data is not representative, then we've taught it wrong. I think a second great tip is around including patients in how we're co-designing what we're trying to create or do with that artificial intelligence, engaging patients and community advocates or others as co-designers and viewing this as a collaboration from the beginning. I think a third tip is around transparency in our processes. Organizations may be doing really good, important things to ensure they have processes to mitigate or minimize bias. But the way you earn trust is by making sure people know about that. Who built the tool? How was it trained? What are the limitations that you know exist? Be transparent about those assumptions. And then the last comes back to just policy and governance. What are the systems we have in place, the reviews, the checks to require that equity impact is being looked at? Equity in this space is doable. It's just not automatic, and we can't presume it. It takes work. It has to be engineered. It has to be baked into the system in the process.
Again, extremely well said. Equity in the system, right? It's not baked in. It's something that we have to work on. One of the favorite parts of what you talked about was including patients in the co-design process. How are you going to work on something without asking your customer to actually try it? Or what do your customers think? One of the things that I like is that we've seen that sort of peak in patient design trials, bringing patients into that conversation, but it's still seen almost more as a pilot. It's not the norm quite yet. It's like, oh, we're trying it out to see how it works. And I imagine the future might seem different. Now, Dr. Aninwene, you had a look on your face that said you wanted to chime in on this particular topic. Do you have a few thoughts to share on this?
It was actually on the previous topic, but with this one, it
Okay.
is. But to stay on task, it's very important that we are using AI in a way that is representative of the population that we're trying to help. Like we have said multiple times throughout this presentation, there are lots of data sets that are skewed towards specific individuals, and many of the people that can be helped the most are left out of these different data sets. So again, like was said so eloquently, we do need to make sure that we bake in the equity throughout the system to make sure that the decision making or the recommendations are able to help the most possible people. So yeah, I just really like the points that were mentioned.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for sharing that. Obviously, it has to start with the data themselves. Now, think about it. Whenever I asked ChatGPT to give me an image of a successful business person, they has a view in mind, and that person does not look like me. So, but I think it's based on the information that is being fed to it. But again, if we cannot diversify our data sets, then we're going to have the same issues that we have continuously. But also the process itself. One of the favorite topics I have around talking about clinical trial diversity is this idea of bringing the patient to the trial, right? So wherever you are, we'll meet you there. And that's really the whole concept of a decentralized trial. And I'm grateful to Craig for sharing some of those insights. Now, before we move it and I take some of the prepared audience questions, anybody else have any points to share around the three topics that we talked about today? Just as a reminder, today we talked about AI and translational science. We talked about AI and storytelling. That one was a big crowd pleaser, so to speak, between us, of course. And then we talked about AI for health equity. Any points around that, any of these topics before we move on?
Just real quick. We touched briefly upon policy, but I
Yes.
want to double tap that because policies are going to be decided right now that are going to affect AI for a very long time. And the two places that they're going to be decided are California and at a federal level, and then everywhere else, because we are the home of AI. AI came, it really, is synonymous with California. And we were tracking a lot of the bills this year. This question you were addressing around guardrails, asking about children, um, privacy issues around them, and just in general, the ease that we can now find and farm information around our kids and how that could be manipulated and honestly exploited for any populations. Dr. Aninwene covered and Craig and others around decision making. There were some major pieces of legislation this year in California around that.
Yeah.
Senator Wiener, and there's a whole kind of grouping of legislators that were focusing on that. And then just another piece of policy this year that legislators were addressing was around training materials and copywriting. And this goes to the heart of what probably freaks out researchers in the same way that Hollywood is scared about AI actors,
Yeah.
that a lot of the research and hard work that is being created, this, you think about in oncology, um, when you think about a treatment, a mammography, and well,
Mhm.
Dr. Slavin did that. It goes back to there's an origin story. The
Right.
challenge with AI is if information is taken away from its owner in ways that they maybe weren't giving permission, um, something will change, or they're going to lose that. And so these are concerns. I just wanted to emphasize that whatever happens around the policy side of AI, it's most likely going to happen right here in California. And
Yeah.
if people aren't paying attention to it, then they ought to, because we probably have the biggest opportunity to create a future of AI guardrails that we
Mhm.
want and
Mhm.
not one that we don't, because there's also tensions between the Googles and the Facebooks and
Mhm.
Meta and their use of
Mhm.
AI and the people that are, having great ideas in their backyards, the moms and the dads and the teenagers that are creating new technologies and innovations and not putting on too many guardrails that is going to prevent them from even getting into the industry. So, um, just wanted to really emphasize that. And, there's been different groups kind of, we touch upon policy,
Yeah.
but I think we go away from it too quickly.
I
So
know.
that's not an issue for
Mm.
today, but it has such direct impact on everything we're talking about. Just to emphasize that people, this is worthy of deeper conversation, exploration for anybody who's thinking about the issues we're talking about today.
Yeah.
Sophia,
Well,
just a quick
I,
yes and on Dan's point,
yeah.
for those that follow some of the organized, almost trade groups advocating policy around health and AI, a lot of the pushback they've gotten, including from Washington right now, is around the perception that big tech is overrepresented. And for those conversations like this around equity and AI, that really creates an opening in the door, right, for more community level, more equitable voices to be
Mhm.
able to come on and balance out those perspectives that there could always be the fear that they consume all the oxygen in the room otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, excellent points, Craig and Dan. You both probably read my mind because my question here was what policies would most effectively incentivize equitable AI data collection? So that was going to be my follow-on question. And, because to your point, Dan, I think policy is very important because we can talk theoretically about all the things that could, would, should happen, but without the right policies in place, those things can, would, and would not, should not happen. It's just the way that it's going to pan out. So any other thoughts around policies that we're seeing, hearing, anything else you want to add? George?
I just want to add on to these points by Craig and Dan, fantastic points,
Yeah.
and also bring it back to the second topic of storytelling.
Yeah.
One of the things that H said was being able to use your AI model as a way to just bounce your ideas off of to make sure that your point's getting through properly. And I
Mhm.
feel that one of the biggest places where scientists, people in the STEM field often fall down is storytelling to people who might
Mhm.
not have a STEM background but are also the policymakers and decision makers. So I think being able to use these tools to not only enhance the data, but to enhance how we are displaying and how we are communicating the data to non-STEM people, to non-technical people, can really advance, STEM and healthcare far beyond just the AI itself. It will help
Right.
to make the policymakers understand that this isn't, silver bullet for all cures and all diseases, but also help them understand, okay, this is where it can reasonably veer off track if we don't properly put guide rails on it. So I just
Right.
wanted to again say that, the quality of storytelling can definitely be enhanced by saying, hey, this is even if you just have a paper or an idea or a concept, writing up your data and then using the AI model to say, hey, can you spit back to me what you're getting out of this?
Right.
Then reviewing that and say, oh, this completely misunderstood what I was trying to display. So you can modify it so that if an AI model misunderstands your data or your story, how much more would a human misunderstand your story? So it allows you to definitely refine your story over and over again without bothering your friends or neighbors, 15 times. So that's something I thought was extremely important.
No, that's great. Story refinement is so important. Did anybody else have a point to make?
I would just add one last thing that I think where I would want to take it is that, I think largely my concern with policy and where things are right now is that the cake is mostly baked. And what I mean by that is I feel like the leaders are kind of set in their way. And so one of the things that I try to look at is think about this a little bit more longer term and generational, and think about how are we developing the next generation of talent and AI talent? Because I think at the end of the day, it's the decision makers. And when you look at the makeup of the current decision makers, they're probably not that reflective of the communities in which they operate in. And so I think too often we try to throw stones at tanks and thinking that they're going to be somehow our magic stone will penetrate. And instead, I think we want to develop the talent that ends up being the tank driver, right? And so, when and that can feel overwhelming, but I think what my recommendation to people listening is look at your area of influence. Each panelist here has an area of influence, right? Is there somebody talented in your network that might not look like the people that you're constantly engaging with? And can you help develop that talent? And I think if we really brought it back to developing incredible talent, like don't lower the standard, don't lower the bar. But trust me, if you just look at your teachers, your neighbors, your place of worship, the sports that your kids go to, there's going to be talent all over the place. If you pick one person and bring them up into your work, Dan, or in my work, or in Sophia's work, you're going to start to see that ripple. And I think too often we look in, especially in this day and age, for solutions that happen now. And then we never get there because we're always looking now. Meanwhile, the people that are in positions to really exert influence have been building their thing up for generations. And so
Right.
I think we got to get into the generational game and start to really think about how are we moving that needle. And yes, it's going to feel longer. Yes, it's going to, you're going to feel discouraged, but I really feel like that is what we need to be doing more of. As opposed to trying to fix stuff now, because everywhere I look, the cake is already baked. You walk into a room, the decision has already been made. You walk into a legislature, the the vote is already done, whipped. So I really think talent and young talent and developing that talent is a really interesting place with respect to equity, health equity, and this AI discussion as well.
No, extremely well said. One of the things that actually inspired me to write my book, which is obviously called Amplifying Scientific Innovation, was around thinking about workforce development, the next generation, right? What are we doing to empower them? And I thought about, I've been teaching for the past 15 years, and I always noticed that a lot of complaints that we have in science labs is about practical projects, like what are students actually working on? So yes, you take chemistry once or twice a week or whatever, but how are you applying that to a real life project? And so I launched a digital marketing apprentice to take all this stuff that we've been talking about, right? The podcast, the insights from a great conversation from people like you, and start to connect the dots in a shorter, more concise manner. And I think, Craig, we talked about it last year, right? YouTube shorts, digital shorts. People are looking for shorter, more concise information. We take 1 hour of this panel discussion, break it down into 5 minutes, then it's 1 minute, then it's 30 seconds. But the idea is to respond to the way that people are ingesting information and to think critically about what kinds of information are palatable, which will require SEO optimization, really thinking through about the analytics part of the work that we do. Because to me, my work is not just about putting out ideas, but to measure the impact. And I'm happy to go to schools like I went to California State University, Long Beach, and they bought a bulk order of my books. And the idea is to also talk to faculty. Faculty play such a critical role in terms of mentorship because they are the ears and the eyes. They are watching students, they are listening to students. The same way we're bringing in patients into sort of clinical trials, we ought to think about innovation from a more comprehensive standpoint. Who are the people consuming what we're doing? But anyway, I didn't expect this conversation to take on such a robust path, but I'm happy with where we are so far. So we have roughly 10 minutes. Yes, only 10 minutes left for this conversation. So I was able to ask you guys questions around policy, which is a question that was sent in advance, and I'm happy about that. Now I want to give us time just to make sure that we're not talking too fast. Because when you tell people, oh, you only have a minute, all they're going to do is just talk fast. And so the same conversational manner, I'll give each of you guys a minute or two to think about an actionable insight that you'd like to share with innovators that is leveraging AI in science and health from your own perspective, whatever that insight would be. So I'm going to close my eyes and say the first person's name that I see. H. Okay. I saw H.
I mean, I think I shared all of those, but I think it comes back to talent. You know, I think when you think about developing talent, I think we just need to have more people in those rooms that look like the communities in which we operate in and at the leadership positions. And I think that that's a longer and not a prettier thing, but I think so long as the decision makers aren't reflective, you can come up with policies, you can advocate as much as you want, but at the end of the day, and it's not anyone's fault, they just don't have the lived experience that comes with being aware. I mean, you know, you look at Airbnb, they didn't understand that when they were creating it, that those practices would be inherent in the system, and now the system sort of taken over and has discriminatory sort of operations. Is not their fault. You know, I don't look at this the founding team at Airbnb and say, oh, it's all your fault. How could they know? They didn't live in that way. How could, you know, having diverse patient data be important to people who have not been impacted by that? So I just think when we're thinking about health equity, when we're thinking about AI, we've got to really think and in terms of talent and developing the next generation of talent and really going into communities that have been at the periphery for far too long and really help them develop their skills. And then we'll have, I think, an AI infrastructure and an operation and the way that it grows in a way that's more reflective of the communities in which we live in. So
Yeah.
talent, which is what we're doing at San
Yeah,
Diego.
it's talent, and you know what, leaning into those lived experiences. What have we learned from previous experiences, and how can we leverage that to shape the future? So thank you for sharing that. All right, I'm going to move on to Dan. Mike, we'd love to hear your thoughts.
Great, thank you. And I think, building off what H was sharing, two quick thoughts. One is just a concept that I know that BioscienceLA is borrowing from Boston tech community, just simply if you see it, you can be it. And this is where there's great opportunity that more people can find themselves taking on paths because AI at its best is with all of the data that it's able to cull can help people to find themselves in so many technology paths. And some of the leaders are at the forefront of this in LA. We mentioned, Cal State LA. Also, so many of the community colleges are working very directly with youth to help them find their path, utilizing AI and to not be intimidated by it. I think this is that part where we're in that transition. Our generation is not as digitally native, but even younger generations aren't native enough to really comprehend AI, and so there's great opportunity there. The other side is just to keep in mind that AI at a current state seemingly is blind. So when I'm talking to or writing to AI, I'm not seeing anybody talking back. I'm getting information or I'm hearing a voice. Is it a male voice? Is it a female voice? Does it have an accent? We're told, the English that certain AI uses is not American English. It's from, other parts of the world. And that's why there's all of those dashes. And so we need to be mindful of who we're talking to not go down paths that aren't necessarily going to give us accurate answers. So on one hand, you've got this great ability to diversify and find yourself as part of this next generation, like we're talking about. And on the other side, just to be mindful of who you're talking to when it is a machine, because it's designed by somebody on the other end that might not necessarily have your interests in mind.
Well, thank you for that. I'm not the only person that has a problem with those dashes. So thank you for confirming what I already know. So I appreciate those insights. And then we're going to move on to Craig. Can we hear some closing thoughts from you, please?
Thanks so much, Sophia. I think the closing for me, I'll drop for those working in health or life sciences around AI is either include patients in your process of co-design or get out of the way. And what I
Hmm.
mean by that is, thanks to the democratization of these tools, patients are no longer patiently waiting for you to build for them. The patients and parents in the most urgent disease areas are constantly and have always constantly been incredible hackers and
Mhm.
figuring out the solutions that they need for their own health and wellness. And increasingly now, the tools to do that type of discovery and development are increasingly democratized. I'll call out one other area that I'm working on right now. It's called the Buffalo Initiative. It's a group of parents of kids in rare diseases that are developing therapeutics for their own children. They're not
Hmm.
waiting for pharma any longer
Mhm.
because pharma is not coming for many of these ultra rare indications where there may be great science. There just haven't been commercial models that are appealing to traditional biopharmaceutical companies. And it's an example of where these patients have figured out what's needed to get these medicines over the finish line, at least where the finish line is through an IND and into the clinic for their children. And whether you look at examples like the Test Foundation, FoxG1 Foundation, each of these entities are patients that have an investigational medicine of their own.
Mhm.
They're not waiting. And that's going to be true for so many more in these categories. Include patients or step aside and let them go.
Yeah, thank you for sharing insights about the
Yeah.
Buffalo Initiative. Again, it goes back to your point around that data-enabled patient, but now we're thinking about data-enabled caregivers, right? Slash patients, that's parents as well, because everybody is going to have a role to play. So thank you for sharing that. And now with 4 minutes left, we have a
Mm.
couple minutes for David Lee, and obviously we didn't
Okay.
forget one more person, but David, please go ahead.
Great. Yeah, and kind of a follow-on to Craig's thought. And I think Craig actually, I think we had some interactions when I was at the Foundation for NIH, you were at Pfizer. So to talk about multi-sector collaborations, and I think these policy issues, a lot of these big, hairy issues, you need a collaboration that is industry, academia, nonprofits, patient groups, patients themselves, government. So I mean, I think that's just one thing I wanted to bring up as a closing thought is how do we make sure that these big hairy issues aren't, just Congress doing something,
Mhm.
a state, administration doing something, but really bringing all the players together because everyone has a role in that. And I think that also brings, back to, I think, a lot of the points today about, making sure that we do have that patient centricity and making sure that we're not building something that we think patients want,
Mhm.
which I think the health system unfortunately does a little bit too often.
Right.
So that was kind of my closing thoughts, was just making sure for these big issues, especially as we continue to move forward, that we do set up these multi-sector collaborative opportunities to engage and to make sure that all the stakeholders are able to have a voice.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's funny that those collaborations are the reasons why we're all here
Mhm.
today. For example, without AILA, I probably would not have connected with you. The same with George, the same with Dan,
Yep.
and the same with H as well. So I think it's just we create these organizations to collaborate, and when we actually go out there and do it, it makes the
Mhm.
magic really happen. And now,
Yeah.
without no further ado, closing
Mhm.
thoughts for Dr. George Ejiofor Aninwene II.
Thank you so much. There have been so many different wonderful points that have been made throughout this presentation. One of the things that keeps ringing in my mind is that AI right now is a very powerful tool that is still constantly evolving, but it's never going to be just a silver bullet for anything. So as we continue to develop, we need to make sure that we're able to use this tool to maximize the different innovations and maximize what we can do. We can use this tool to lower the bar to entry to be able to access innovation and healthcare. But also, it's very important that we set the proper data sets, that we are involving patients, that we're involving diverse groups, and that we are making sure that we are involving proper guide rails.
Mhm.
Things such as, do no harm, things
Mhm.
such as make sure that even when there's an AI recommendation, that we still have human feedback and humans say is still the last word. I feel that
Mhm.
this tool is so powerful and that we're right now at a nexus point, almost at a tipping point where we're going to be going from like, I'm always reminded how the time before Google was a thing to the
Yeah.
time after Google was a thing. The time when we used to go to the libraries to search our information. Now we go online. AI is going to be very powerful and move forward rapidly in the next 10 years. And we need to make sure that we are creating proper guide rails, proper access, and proper equity so that no one is left behind. So, and also that we are maximizing its potential for human embetterment.
Yeah, extremely well said. Thank you all to all of you for joining today and for your insights. And for the audience who were able to join, grateful to you for joining this LA Tech Week 2025 special edition of Amplifying Scientific Innovation. Today, we explored how AI is transforming translational science, enabling better storytelling, and advancing health equity. 3 themes that will continue shaping the future of innovation, alongside, of course, conversations around policy and making sure they don't leave any patients behind. The replay is available right now on the Sophia Consulting Firm's YouTube channel. Subscribe for more conversations at the intersection of science, strategy, and storytelling. And until next time, take care and don't forget to keep amplifying scientific innovation. Thank you. Have a good one.